Now, pho is the national dish of Vietnam. In Vietnam, we eat this for breakfast, we eat it for lunch, we eat it for dinner. And as you can see, it could be a bigger bowl. You can serve it with chicken, you can serve it with a tofu topping, and you can also serve it with beef. The most important thing to know about pho, actually there's several things to know, is really how the ingredients are put together. And one of the most fundamental things about Vietnamese cuisine, which applies to this dish, but applies to really most dishes in our repertoire, is really how ingredients are cut. It's very important, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So here we have yellow onions. I'm going to cut it very, very thin using a mandolin. You know, this one here is a Japanese mandolin, which we use in the restaurant. So thin, very thinly sliced, okay? This is also the case for ginger. Here we have a very thin piece, paper thin piece of ginger. What that does is when you float it in very hot broth, you get this really wonderful gingery flavor. Okay, green onions and cilantro are cut the same way. Please do not cut them half an inch thick or a quarter inch thick or an eighth of an inch thick. As you can see here, it's very, very thin. Another thing to really know about how to handle aromatics, okay, when I say aromatics, I mean all your herbs, all your onions, is that you never want to wash this and have it really wet and start cutting away. What that does is that it really bruises everything. What you want to do is you want to wash it and let it dry in your walk-in for even 2-3 hours, extremely dry. Come back with a very thin, lightweight knife, okay? Contrary to what you might already been told, but in Vietnamese cooking, in Southeast Asian cooking, herbs are so important that they need to be, in order to really benefit from all the wonderful flavors of fresh herbs, you need to know how to take care of them. And how to take care of them? Very gently. Use a very nice lightweight knife like this one. Cut very thin, okay? No chopping for fresh herbs. Cut very thin, see? Almost no weight at all, okay? If you go to the Asian kitchen, you will see a lot of very lightweight knife because of that reason, because we believe that all the fresh herbs really, you won't benefit from them if they're cut too thick, okay? And and this you will find helpful, is that if you wash everything and keep it dry and then cut it very lightly, no pressure, no chopping, and if you put it in a container with a lid on it, you would be able to use it for 2 days, and that's wonderful, okay? So that you want to be very careful with fresh herbs. The next thing we want to talk about is really the noodles, the most important part of the noodle soup. You will probably be using dried noodles similar to this, okay? They're also called rice sticks, and basically made with rice flour, water, and salt. And to use it, you would probably cook a big batch in a kettle, right? And you want to make sure that the water is boiling. So when you wash it, you basically boil it for, depending on the thickness of the noodles, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 2.5. And here's what's really important. After you drain the noodles, you want to make sure, put your gloves on or use a paddle, make sure they're very resilient. So don't worry about the noodles falling apart, because you're cooking it al dente, because we're going to cook it again. And what you want to do, this is very important, you write this down, is that you have to wash it. You have to rinse it in lots of water, running water, right? You want to rinse it until the water is extremely clear. And what you'll have later is a bunch of sort of a tangle of noodles, and you want to pre-portion, whatever you like the portion to be, 3 ounces, 4 ounces, is probably more like 4 ounces. Okay, so when it comes to service time, you have your broth ready to go. The broth is being brought in for you, so you don't have to put all these spices in there. It's already in your pot. Traditionally, it's made with roasting your ginger, spices such as cinnamon, and fennel and coriander seeds and star anise. I love that star anise. But anyway, it's already in your pot. I floated a few pieces of ginger just so that your dining room will smell really wonderful, and when your customers walk by the pot, it smells so good. So here I have a pre-portioned noodles, right? So I'm going to put it in a wire basket. You do need to get a wire basket for this dish, okay? I've got my poached noodles in here. You put some bean sprouts in here, and you're going to cook it, right? And since this is already cooked, you're only wanting to kind of re-thermalize it, right? Make it hot. It's very important that the noodles are extremely hot. If this is not boiling, you wait until your pot is boiling, and then you put the noodles in, okay? So here we have, and notice I'm doing this. This is important because you don't want any water in your bowl because that will dilute the flavor of the pho, right? Put the noodles in here, and then you come and get your toppings, okay? Paper-thin slices of yellow onions that we talked about earlier. Okay, as you can see, if you do it correctly, you don't need to use that much, right? Some cilantro and green onions, right? 1 piece of ginger. This is the secret to this dish because there's nothing like fresh ginger. We already put some ginger in the stock for you, but 1 paper-thin slice of ginger will really give that last-minute nice finish, okay? Got some poached chicken, which you can bring in and hand shred them, or you can steam it, or boil it. You just want to make sure that it's not overly cooked, okay? So everything is really, so far, really simple, very clean. Then you add broth to it, okay? Doesn't that look lovely? It's important that when you pour the broth into the bowl, what you want to do is you want to pour it around the rim, okay? Not necessarily right on top and make all your chicken go down to the edges. So here you have a wonderful bowl of Vietnamese pho, okay? P-H-O. You need to know how to say that too, pho. And what's so wonderful about this is all the wonderful aromatics in here. Traditionally, it's served, the condiments are served on the side. Some lime, you can cut some limes and leave it out on your condiment station. If you can serve fresh herbs on the side, that's wonderful. If you can't, if you're doing really high volume, what you can do is just cut them, okay? You want to cut them very gently, like I was talking about before, right? Don't chop anything, just slice them. And here you want to slice them a little bit thicker, okay? Not paper thin, because you want a little color, and I can really smell the cilantro. So you can do this. And sometimes in Vietnam, we also serve some chili sauce, sriracha sauce on the side. Personally, for me, I like the clean flavors, and I only serve it with lime and sliced jalapenos or red chilies. But this finishes the dish. You can also garnish it with black pepper. Now, there are 2 things I really want you to remember about serving pho, and that is you have to serve lots of broth, okay? So it's like 3 parts broth to 1 part noodles, because it's the broth that flavors everything in the dish. So you want lots of broth so they can drink the broth afterwards. The second thing is when your broth is already reconstituted, you don't want to sit on the heating element. You don't want it to be on the stove and let it sit and reduce, more than an hour, because it will get salty, obviously. But the most important thing is that all the wonderful aromatics that's in the broth will dissipate, and it will go flat on you. And you do not want that. So please remember that.